Hello, you're here for one more lesson of this T-FLEX analysis training course, and the topic for today will be the definition of the initial conditions. Initial conditions are used for modeling of processes that change in time. You can set these initial conditions for a non-stationary process at time 0, and we can split this into major blocks. So the mechanical studies on one side and the thermal studies on the other side. So I've modeled a simple part. It doesn't matter what it is, because the idea is only to show you the sequence to allow the calculation of these initial conditions. So analysis will create a new study, and now it is important because instead of the basic static strength, we need to either choose one of the dynamic analysis or thermal analysis. In thermal analysis, we need to choose the non-stationary thermal analysis, and on this one we can choose several of these, but for example, the mode superposition or the transitional process. For example, we can choose this guy here. Okay, creating a study. Let us create a mesh and go for it. Okay, the mesh is created, and now because we've created one of the studies that allow us to open some of these conditions, and some of them or the important ones are the initial velocity, initial acceleration, and these are the ones that allow us to calculate things with change in time. For example, initial velocity. This has a sequence, and it's not very difficult. So basically, we need to activate the initial velocity. We need to choose the body or the bodies. So let us choose the body. We need to set the initial velocity value. So let us say, for example, 10. We can choose the units for sure. We can choose a direction, for example, this one, and okay. And now when we go and solve under the parameters, we have also the possibility to make some definition of the parameters in time. So we can say how long it will happen, the study, and the time increment, which is also important. Then we have a couple of methods for the integration, not important for this for the goal of this lesson, but we can explain a little more on the theoretical course about what is the purpose of each one of these methods. And basically, the definition of these conditions, it is enough to allow the calculation to work. So we have conditions and the result. Let us do a calculation here. Okay, we need to set some boundary conditions in this particular case, but it is enough in terms of these initial conditions for the variation in time. We could have also, instead of having the initial velocity, we could have also a definition of initial acceleration. Basically, it is the same, because we need to set also the initial acceleration topic. We need to choose also the body or the bodies, set a value, for example 5, a direction also, and definition done. So it's very similar either for the velocity or for the acceleration. Again, on solve we get this tab for parameters and we can set the variation in time. Now on the thermal side, let us delete this. For a thermal analysis study, the initial temperature condition is used to specify the temperature of in the non-stationary thermal study. It's not also very complex to make the proper definition of what is done or what is needed to create the calculation. So study, again, we need to define in this particular case for a thermal analysis a non-stationary thermal process. Okay. We can also, or we need to set also a mesh. And now for the thermal study, we go to the temperature icon, not in the forces. We need to set the initial temperature, so give it a value, for example, 20 degrees Celsius or other. Set the body, okay, or the bodies, or edge, or vertex, or whatever. Define, and again under solve we get also tab parameters, and again we can set the process in time, okay, and with a time increment. And we can also set, or we can use the preset temperature, and the default value is like this, but we can define whatever we may want. So this is basically the same but focused in thermal studies. I will not calculate because I have other conditions missing and I will get mistakes, but the purpose of this video was to show you what are these initial conditions again that are related with variation in time. I think to see a couple of examples you can check our videos of examples. We've mentioned them already, and it is important for some of the topics that we'll cover on these lessons to see the examples, because we have I would say real cases that intend to show the use of all these topics, and with a common goal that it is to reach a result on a study. Anyway, if you need any support, any help, you know how to reach us, so we'll be around to give you all the necessary backup for your questions.